You're listening to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast where Peter and I talk about life as business owners and partners and parents. Today we are drawing another one of our stickies from the basket. This one was, I think, brought to you by Peter and the book that he is destined to write, Life by Design. And the topic is very long, so we're going to have to come up with a new title or Emily is not going to be pleased with us. It says Heart Rate Movement Exercise and the Central Role of Physical Exertion on the Mind, Body, and Soul. Peter, why don't you...
It's a big title because it's a big topic.
Collapse that into one word for us.
Well, first of all, I'll say that I'm not a fitness or health advisor. I just play one on Instagram. So here I am. Yeah. But no, I think that this topic actually came to me as, again, I'm writing this book called Life by Design. And really, I lost in the last few years, well, several years ago now, I guess I lost about 40 or 50 pounds. And I actually, to be honest with you, was even shocked that I had 40 or 50 pounds to lose. I'm a little heavier now, but like 40 or 50 pounds, I was overweight, but I wasn't like, I didn't think I was obese, but obviously I was, I was quite big. And it really made me reflect on how my mind works when my body is doing well versus not doing well. And obviously it's been a journey of losing all that weight, but then since losing that weight and being very active, I had periods of, inactivity or less activity. And I can really feel personally when I'm not active, my ability to actually work and sit at a computer and function and do well, it's really hard. I actually can't do it. I get literally physically, my shoulders start to hurt, my head starts to hurt, my brain stops working, I get foggy. So really this topic is, again, back to it's going to be in my book, Life by Design. And, it's sort of, I'm talking right now about productivity and work, to me, this topic's about more than that. And I think you and I, Christina, talk a little bit about sometimes just, I want to, if I live long, I want to live long in a way that's actually allowing me to live my life and not be tied up or, incapacitated, unable to move. And so really, obviously there's a lot of things, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but there's a lot of things you need to do now in our 30s and 40s to make sure that when we're in our 70s and 80s, that we actually have the capacity to live our life by design and to actually move and bring our groceries in and, I don't know, open a jar, right? Little really simple things, right? So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, just to unpack the topic a little bit. There's a lot, it's a big topic, so that's why it has a big title.
Yeah, I think movement, especially as a entrepreneur, a business owner, or parent, is something that often gets deprioritized, but is so important. I think that, with the kind of standard, and I don't want to categorize or stereotype or any of the things, but I think I can speak from our experience in terms of when we had a corporate job and when we weren't parents. There was routine and it, okay, you wake up and there were sometimes in our lives where, you'd wake up and you'd do fitness and then you'd go to work and that was the day, or, you'd wake up and you'd get to work and you do your thing and you're going to the gym after work or at lunchtime. And it's, I think, easier to bake in when the stakes aren't always your own. And I think as a business owner, I think for a long time, I felt like the stakes, and I still feel like this sometimes, right? That the stakes are all about you and they live and die by your own sword. But I think to your point, being healthy makes you a better leader in all aspects of your life. I think it took me a long time, post kids especially. I think probably once I started CIPR and went out on my own from corporate and then kind of, became a mom and all the things, it took me a few years to kind of really reprioritize movement in myself. And, you're moving a lot in the first year of your kid's life anyways, because you're up and downstairs for diapers and all this stuff. But yeah, I think even recently, I mean, we had kind of a change in the household where, I used to be the one to wake up early and work out. Now you are that. So I kind of had to reprioritize and understand my days better. And, September, I would say I went through a bit of a, I don't want to say funk, because I was still being active and moving, but I wasn't getting the amount of steps in that I'm used to. And, so this past month, I've been really focused on waking up at 5 in the morning before you go do your stuff, and, getting 2,000 steps in outside and getting your brain moving. What's interesting is I was actually listening to a podcast this morning, and one of the topics on it was movement and walking, and how, there's science behind, for an hour after you can go take a brisk walk, your brain has been stimulated from a creativity perspective for 1 hour. So it's like, to me, I'm like, oh, well, no wonder my productivity in the morning after I take that walk has been so high, because I've done something there. So yeah, I think movement's important. And I think that we undervalue how necessary it is as just a functioning adult, right? Like, I think it's cliche to say, oh, exercise makes you feel better, but I think it does.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that obviously many of us in the world work in these desk jobs where we sit in front of screens all day. And as they say, sitting is the new smoking. That's like the new kind of motto out there. And it's true. And, I talk to some of our staff all the time, and it's like, you know what, like every probably 25 minutes, you should get up and just take a couple steps and move. Every, like for me, it's like I, I physically can't. My body just stops functioning and my brain stops functioning. So I got to go take that walk. I got to go do something. I got to go stimulate, to your point, my mind. It's critical, right? So, and then in terms of, parenting, and I think this is something you and I have talked about on this podcast before, but, I think when you become a new parent, especially if you're running your own business, you almost feel like, oh, I can't do that because I got to be every minute I got to be working on my business or in my business. I can't do that because I got to be there as a parent and partner for my spouse. I can't, you always I can't put myself first. And then it always, I think I said this on this podcast before, but it's like, that saying on an airplane is make sure you put on your own oxygen mask before you put on others' oxygen masks. And it's true, right? And so it's like, it's not I can't, it's I have to. I have to. And when you and I were doing 75 hard a little while ago, which for those people who don't know, 75 hard is a like a fitness, I guess, program. One of the things of 75 hard is you do two 45-minute workouts a day. One of them is outside, which is a huge commitment for a parent running a business, right, with their spouse. It's a
In the
massive
cold,
commitment. It's
in the
in the
cold.
cold in February in Calgary. Like, it was a lot. But I've never been more productive than the time that I was doing 75 hard. I was just like, every time I'd sit at my desk, it was like, okay, I got to get this done. Boom, 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 get it done. Super focused, super moving things forward. It was actually a really amazing thing. It's almost like I kind of like sometimes felt like it was like all of a sudden things were ramped up to like a new level, right? And then I stopped doing 75 hard and things were kind of back down and sort of ramp back down, right? So it's kind of an interesting phenomenon if you actually go through it and you put yourself through that, to see actually what your body's capable of doing, and then what your mind's. And I think the point of this podcast and this topic is, when you treat your body right, it's amazing what your mind will do for you and how it'll work for you and how well it'll work, how much clarity you'll get, how much focus you have, all of the things, right? So it's all tied together. Obviously, we're very complex beings, and and I think it's all tied together also in terms of, I think, as partners in a relationship. I think if both people are getting the exercise and getting the physical, and if there's a social component to that, then that all helps as well, right? So it all works together in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that it's one of those subconscious things too, that until you start to tune in, you don't really realize. Like, I think that, the days that I don't have movement in the morning, especially, I used to think it was like, oh, if I don't work out in the morning, my day goes a certain way. But now, since I've been taking my walks in the morning too, it's like this. If I don't have movement in the morning, my day feels a lot different. And I do
Yeah.
think that, again, I think, okay, yeah, everyone's tired in the morning. I'm tired. And there's always an excuse. Oh, I have 100 emails I have to write, or everything I need to do. But again, this prioritization of movement and self, I think, is really important. The other the same podcast I was listening to this morning, it also just talks about the fact that like we were made to move. You know,
Totally.
it's only been very recent in human history that we sit and we, feel very safe and can do that, right? We were meant to be hunting and gathering. We were meant to
Hmm.
be trying to survive every day, not, survival in terms of how we know it now, in terms of making money and all of those things, but, just running from prey, from predators and
Yeah.
finding food and places to stay warm and protecting our offspring. I think it's a very interesting, thing to think about from the perspective of like we weren't created to sit like this. And yes,
Hmm.
we are evolving in many different ways through every generation, but like the bodies we have and the way we're built still crave movement. And again, I
Yeah.
think it's just really remarkable in terms of the science around, what happens in your brain. I feel like good timing for this topic because I'm fresh off this podcast, but another interesting study that they had talked about and they had done in this one was, they had X amount of people. I guess at the age of 30, your hippocampus in your brain starts to shrink a percentage every year. Those that exercise can kind of stop that phenomenon. So they had kind of two groups, one that just walked. Like it wasn't like, oh my God, they're bodybuilders and they're like becoming the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was like they just walk.
Hmm.
Brisk walking for a limited amount of time every day. The other group just did some stretching, like they weren't kind of on the same thing. And, the group that did the walking was able to stop that kind of shrinkage of the hippocampus, whereas the group that was stretching, I think it was like over 1% shrinkage on average, which I think is a lot. Like, I don't know,
Totally.
as you get older. So again, to me, these things that you wouldn't think are related, right? Like you think about exercises, other muscles in your body, other organs, which it's obviously good for too. But yeah, I think that there's a really interesting correlation. And again, relating it back to business, it's like, yeah, you can sit and grind it out for 24 hours a day.
Yeah. The work never ends.
There's no shortage of things to do. I can find something to do every minute of the day.
Yeah.
But finding time to do work better, I think,
Yeah.
becomes a really important switch to turn on.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also, totally. And you and I obviously listen to a lot of podcasts and some of the same podcasts and a lot of science around this stuff. But both of us are not scientists. So, we're not going to sit here. We'll butcher the science and the stats. But, I'm really fascinated lately actually around the concepts of what kind of movement as well and what kind of movement matters. And sort of there was one podcast again that I listened to recently and they're talking about, again, this concept of living well into your older age, right? Like being able to walk upstairs, open a jar, do simple things. And it's actually remarkable how much of what types of movements you need to be focused on in order to do those things, right? And so as an example, the VO2 max, which is basically your like maximum heart rate and then your ability to like recover from sort of a maximum heart rate and be able to still kind of recover and be, ready to go for the next thing is apparently like one of the number one factors of sort of determining, how long you might live, right? Like your longevity. Now, obviously, again, I don't want to butcher the science, but it's a major sort of contributor to the length of life. But then your muscles actually are a huge contributor to your ability to do things. So, and your muscles degrade so fast as you get older that I really underappreciated and still like I still don't work out my muscles enough. Like Christina actually works out at the gym and does a lot of like weight training, but I need to do more. I do more. Yeah, Christina's just showing her pipes. If you're watching on YouTube, you might want to turn off this podcast, go to YouTube and just check those pipes out. But no, but actually working out and physically, like I do a lot more calisthenic training, which means basically just like my own weight. So push-ups, chin-ups, or sit-ups, those types of things. But training your muscles and keeping your muscles strong is super, super important. And if you aren't strong and aren't able to do things in your 30s and 40s, like you're gonna have nothing. And we all see these people literally, they just have like bones and skin hanging from their bones when they're in their older age. Versus Christina and I watched a show on longevity on Netflix. I can't remember what it was called. They were looking at the blue zones. And my favorite part of that show was these people in Japan, these little old ladies. And same thing, they were going like this 100 years old and they got muscles. You know what I mean? That's something to strive for and to live for, because ultimately, and those people do things like, simple things like sit on the floor and then have to get up and do push-ups, and like it doesn't have to be go to a gym and use all these machines that isolate all these muscles. Like just like simple movements, natural movements, stepping upstairs, doing some push-ups, right? Like just incorporate those things. It's incredible actually how much that's going to impact your quality of life when you're older. And ultimately, to me, it's like, my motto in life is live free and die strong. That's the words I want to sort of, if I could do anything in my life, I want to live free and I want to die strong. And that means have the ability to walk upstairs, open jars, like simple things when I'm 80 or 90, if I can live that long, right? So anyways, that's, I think, to me, it's really for people our age, in our 30s and 40s, it's really quite shocking,
Right.
actually, and eye-opening in terms of how much what you do now matters for how you're going to set yourself up for the future. And on that note, switching to parenting, obviously being a role model for your children in your physical activity, in your movement, doing stuff physically with your kids, going on hikes. I mean, all those things are going to just create incredible habits that I feel like a lot of people in our generation did not see from our parents. I don't blame our parents or anything like that, but our parents took us to all the places and did all, took us to all the things, but they themselves didn't necessarily do the things, right? And that's not everybody. That's a very blanket statement. My dad was very physically strong his whole life. He was an auto mechanic. He was always the strongest dad around, and I actually kind of want to be the strongest dad around. Like, yeah, I'm doing an MMA fight camp right now, and I'm going to be fighting in a cage in February. And I was talking to Bartek about it today, and because I'm kind of training with this guy Josh, who's like the biggest muscle guy in the whole class, and we were just talking about it, and I was like, oh, I wouldn't want to fight a guy like Josh in the actual fight because he's like 40 pounds heavier than me, but I really like training with him. And he was like, oh, why would you like training with somebody if he's so much bigger than you? And I said, well, because it's a challenge for me and it makes me stronger and better to have to work, against, instead of somebody's lighter than me and smaller that I can easily just do whatever with. Right. But I think that, again, being a positive role model is by doing, not by telling and or being a hypocrite about it.
Yeah, I think the residual effect on kids is huge. I saw it a lot this summer. I mean, we obviously lead an active lifestyle, and we always have before kids, right? I think when you're dog people, you naturally become people who need to take walks every day. And there was one day in particular where there's a walk we do by our house that is a standard walk for us. It's a long walk. I think, it's
About an hour.
an hour, for an adult back and forth. And I had taken the boys who have done this walk countless times and a friend of theirs. And, I thought that little kid was going to have to leave him on the trail and come back and get a car. But for me, it would just became this real eye-opening moment of like, wow, like our kids really perform high at this active level just because they're used to. And I think that we see in them too this need for getting outside and playing. Our kids, and I don't necessarily just think it's our kids, but I don't know many kids that can sit in front of a TV or a screen for a prolonged period of time. There becomes this kind of, you can tell like they're itchy on the couch, right? They're starting to do backflips and jump
We've all
around,
been there. We've
right?
all been there, as kids, right?
Yeah. And it's like, our kids know, okay, we're going to go downstairs and play now, or we're going to go outside. And, I think it's fun to be able to, hey mom, can you play hockey with us? And this weekend I was playing with them, and one of them goes, you're not bad for a mom. And it made me laugh, right? Because there's obviously this stereotype around moms and sports and these things, but I've always been athletic and always kind of been the sporty person. I think what I would say though, from a parenting perspective to moms is, a lot of moms are I need to start doing that. Oh, I need to start.
Right.
Yeah, I need to do it. And you just need to. Like, no one is going to
Yeah.
keep you accountable except yourself. I made that decision.
Yeah.
I said that for many years. Oh, I got to get back into it. I got to start. I got to, you just have to carve out the time. And I'm so happy that I did, obviously for myself first. I think you need to be selfish
Yeah.
about it. But secondly, like, I'm a great example to my kids, and my mom, my kids do call me the strong mom and the fit mom. And I like that. And, I'm not a
Yeah.
size 0, and I'm not the skinniest, whatever, but I'm healthy, and I can enjoy the treats with the kids, and I can do whatever guilt free. And I think what I would say is, again, just stop saying, oh, I gotta do that. Like, it's like, obviously,
Yeah.
so just do it. And then I would say to
Yeah.
moms, start making your hangouts and your mom's nights active. Like, I started a little group,
Right.
the moms, and we do a monthly spin class together, take them all to YYC Cycle. We do an evening, and you know we sweat and we laugh, and it's super hard for some and super easy for others. And sometimes it's shocking to
Yeah.
see this mom that you see all bundled up in the pickup line, all of a sudden super strong and ready to go. And it's great. I mean, we could easily do a mom's night out drinking or
Well, yeah,
mom's
totally.
night
Yeah.
out ice cream, but choosing to do things like that with friends, or hey, let's meet up for a walk instead of meeting up for a drink. I think our
Yeah.
conscious decisions you can take, especially when you're sitting all day, make a different choice. And again, easier
Yeah.
said than done, but not really. I don't know.
Not
I'm
really. Not
judging
really.
it.
Yeah, I agree with that advice, and I struggled because like we have a we're in a drinking we live in a drinking culture, right? And it's just easy to go out for a drink. That's the easy thing to do. That's the default. That's what people do, and that gets old, right? And you get middle age, and that starts to get old. And if that's what your friends are all doing, either you need to go find a new group of friends, or you need to go sign up for something that where people are doing something different or whatever. Or you'd be surprised, like you said, put it out there, hey, let's go do this, and people actually will be like, oh yeah, I'd love to go do that, right? So don't just assume that, oh, nobody wants to, because I think a lot of people do want to do something different. And so just put it out there into the world, and things will come. And my advice, if I can give advice, and I guess my advice will be to the dads and to the middle-aged men out there, is find something that you love doing, and really do that. So like, I hate working out. I hate lifting weights and pumping iron, and I hate it. Like, I find it boring. I don't enjoy it. Like, there's nothing about it I like. I tried to do it for a while. I quit that. And so it's like, listen to yourself. But you know what I really like doing? I really like combat. I really like fighting. I really like boxing. I like martial arts. I like kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. So that's what I do. And it doesn't mean I have to be in a ring getting the shit kicked out of me or whatever, although I also enjoy that, but that's a different story. But you don't have to do that. You could just go and sign up for a course. You can go to a heavy bag class at a place like Rumble. You can go do anything. You can go get a personal trainer to do some pad boxing or whatever. But like, figure out what you like doing. I like playing soccer, but you know what? My knees were starting to get a little soft on the soccer, and I was a little worried about hurting myself. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this because I don't want to hurt myself. And so and just sort of figure out, experiment. I love hiking. I go hiking with my friends. It fills me up in a lot of different ways, right? So, just go try some things, give it a shot, start slow, right? And figure out what it is that you like, and then listen to yourself. If you don't like it, stop doing it and go do something else. Because the worst thing you can do is, oh, I hate this and I dread it and I gotta go do this thing and it's terrible, right? It's like, you're not gonna be successful at that. And I'll use spin as an example. I don't really enjoy spin. I'll do it once in a while, but I love going out on a bike ride outside. It's the same thing, right, more or less, but it's different. And so, so you got to just experiment, you got to try it out, and you don't know until you try, right? So, and I'll just put a plug out for martial arts and fighting, because I think it's the best all around thing you can do personally. And for women and for men, I personally think it sort of works. It sort of checks all the boxes of fitness, in my opinion, all in one thing, and it's super fun. But anyways, that's just me. But make sure you just enjoy what you're doing, and then it becomes easy.
Yeah, I will say my shoulders never looked so good as when I was doing boxing almost every day. But I think too, like, to your point, I took a mountain bike class the last 2 years and just loved it. Like,
Yeah.
it was really something that was cool, and again, burnt so many calories doing it, because half the time I'm just terrified. but it was fun. And I really agree with that. Before we go, I found that podcast. It's Dr. Chatterjee. His podcast is Feel Better, Live More. It's one that Peter and I both love. I think it's quite an incredible podcast, really great tips. But the episode I was listening to is 381. And it's, why your brain wants you to be, I can't see the whole title here, but it was basically why your brain wants you to be lazy. But yeah, that's the episode. Good conversation on just movement and why it's important. And I'll say, I think it's, as we've prioritized it in different ways, I think we've become better business owners and better partners and better parents.
Better parents. Yeah. It helps every aspect of your life. No question. It's probably the most fundamental underlying thing you can do to make yourself better, in my opinion.
All right, go take a walk.
Good live.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Two Babies in a Business. To learn more, visit ciprcommunications.com or catch us on our socials at CIPRcoms.